Hi guys and welcome back to the channel. In today's video I'm going to be showing you how to relic a polyester finished guitar. In this case it's a Jet JS300 Stratocaster. I'll show you the full relicing process on how we go from this to a fully relic masterpiece, which I'll unveil at the end. So let's dive in. Now the reason I'm holding this guitar in this way is so you can't quite see the full finished version yet. We've got a lot to get through today. I'm going to show you the full process on how to relic your guitar. A lot of people say you can't relic a polyester finished guitar. I've got to say that's dead wrong. You can do a really good job and they come out looking fantastic if you do it in the correct way. So today I'm going to share with you the full process and how we arrive at a great feeling, playing and sounding guitar, irrespective of whether it's a Strat or any type of guitar. Once you get into relicing guitars properly, it can become really addictive. It's a lot of fun and it makes your instrument feel and play so much better in my opinion. So we've got a lot to get through today, so let's dive straight into the process and we'll come back at the end for the big reveal and some playing so you guys can hear this beautiful guitar.
Okay, so what we can see here, guys, is detuning the strings to basically try and remove the neck in one piece. What I don't want to have to do is remove all of the strings because they're brand new. I've only just put them on. I fitted a set of Ernie Ball 11s and that gave the guitar a much more sturdy feel, and the thin 9s or 8s that were on it, they really just sucked and felt like spaghetti, so I always stick 11s on my Strats. And so what I thought I'd do is try and preserve those strings. I don't want to have to chuck them in the bin after just a couple of days of playing them, so I'll save those for later. As you can see, I've flipped over the guitar now and I'm just removing the neck plate, and the whole plan here is basically to try and remove the trem block and the entire tremolo system along with the neck, which means you don't have to remove the strings. It's not difficult to do. It's probably the best way to do it that I've found over the years. So as you can see, I'm just using a power tool to quickly remove the screws, and I wouldn't recommend using the power tool for any other purpose than unscrewing things. As long as you've got a good connection with screwdriver head into the screws, you should be able to remove them without causing any damage to the wood. I would recommend using a handheld manual screwdriver for any other purpose, such as screwing the screws back in. Definitely don't use a power tool to screw in the screws because they just have too much torque, even at its lowest setting. My little handheld screwdriver basically just would rip right through the wood and just round out the screw, and then you've got a whole job of trying to repair that screw hole and the thread on the screw. So not worth it, but totally safe, perfectly fine to use to remove screws. Don't see a single problem with doing that. Just as long as you've got a good connection, it doesn't round the head of the screw, you should be okay. And as you can see here, basically I am just going to remove the 6 vintage style screws that hold the trem block in place, and once that's out, basically the neck, which I've obviously already released, should just come out of the neck pocket from the body and lift off nicely, keeping all the strings and the neck all together as one sort of cohesive unit. I can place that to one side, don't have to worry too much about it, just leave that somewhere like on a towel or somewhere really soft, just to make sure I don't dink up the neck or the frets or the headstock. And yeah, it's probably the easiest procedure that you can imagine really. Once you've got these screws out, it just take a bit of doing, and that's why I'm using the McAllister handheld screwdriver, because it just saves a lot of time. If you sort of do this by hand, you'd be looking at probably 5 times longer, you know, and a lot of wrist ache, so it's just easier and quicker just to do this. The trem blocks are held in by pretty lengthy 1-inch or 1.5-inch screws, depending on the size of the quality of the trem. Yeah, so as you can see, the actual trem block itself is very substantial. You know, you'd probably pay an extra £30-40 or dollars for that if you were to get a cheaper guitar and you'd have to upgrade it. So that's a great saving that you get with this Jet JS300. It's just got a very good quality vintage style trem block in it already, so that's a massive bonus. As you can see, everything's coming apart now nicely. That wire there is basically the ground, so that it went through the cavity into the back of the guitar where the trem block was. So while I'm at it and I've got the guitar facing upwards, I'm going to now just remove the final few screws in the body, which is obviously the the input ashtray there, and that is still connected obviously by, as you can see there, I've just managed to not get the thread of the electric in there properly, so I'm going on with the manual. And now quickly just unsoldering the final few connectors, obviously just connecting up there to the jack, so I can actually remove the jack, because where the cable comes through the body, it comes through a cavity, so obviously you can't pull that through if the ashtray is still connected to it, so you've got to unsolder that. It's not a big job, obviously you just get your soldering iron, connect it up and wait for it to warm up, and then just disconnect 2 wires. We'll figure out which way they went back on later on. It's not difficult. And there we go, there we've got the neck and the trem block all out, and gonna go and put that somewhere safe, and now we've just been left with the body. Last couple of bits of silverware coming off. These are not too bad, although they are held on with rubber sort of cushions rather than the classic felt style, so that's something that I'll definitely be switching over to the felt style, on the rebuild. And there we go, full on stripped body, really good quality, good weight. It's basswood. The neck pocket is really well done, really well routed. And the best thing to sort of take this horrible shiny plastic polyester finish off are these sanding pads. They're great, and for a number of reasons. You can go with a very fine, these are called super fine, and you can go with those, I suspect they're about 800 grit. You can go lower, you can go higher, because obviously as you wear the poly down, you can see that poly sludge there, it just starts coming straight off. It's obviously clear polyester finish over a seafoam paint, and I'm just leaning across the camera there occasionally, just to, basically I've got a water supply just to the side there, that's a sink just to the side, so I'm just rinsing off, and you've got to keep doing that, so you don't want to apply too much water to the body. I'm going to try and keep that quite minimal, and keep rinsing the sanding pad off. So yeah, the sanding pads are great because they're foam backed, so you can press on, you get a really good feel for it. So obviously, as well as speeding up this footage, I've also cut out quite a few sections because it just takes a long time. This process, doing this by hand, is the only way to do it really, and it just does take between maybe an hour or 2 hours, depending on how far or how much of a relic job you want to have in the end product. Effectively what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to select areas based on images that I've looked at and my own experience with having and owning and borrowing and using vintage relics, especially vintage relic strats. You get an understanding of where they wear, the kind of areas of the body that take a few dinks and that do get worn out. So there's particular areas that you want to focus on wearing right through the poly finish, and then straight through the paint as well to the wood. That happens naturally over time on a heavily played relic strat. So effectively what I'm doing is I'm focusing a lot of time on those areas like the lower bout, the upper arm area. That takes a lot of wear obviously, and being stood up and sat down, so it's natural that you'd go through the paint there. So on the whole guitar I'm working my way through all of the polyester finish to take it right down to a satin or a matte finish. I really don't like that shiny plastic look. And I'm also working underneath the pick guard as well, just because I want to be really complete with this job. I don't want to just do around the main areas where you see, and then as soon as you remove the pick guard you can see all the original shiny polyester. I don't think that's really a great move, so just for the sake of completion and the fact that I plan to keep this guitar, I want to do a really good job on this. You can see I'm just sort of occasionally toweling off all of the excess polyester sludge that does come up. That's natural, obviously. When you wet and dry sand you end up with kind of like a white sort of paste as you go through it, so it's important to keep removing that occasionally and rinsing off those pads really frequently. And there you go, you can see I've removed all of the shiny finish there, so now it's down to like a nice satin sort of matte look. And what I'm doing now is I'm wiping it down with the antibacterial disinfectant wipes, and one of the reasons I use those because basically they're very soft. They're not like full of bleach or anything like that. All they basically got in them is kind of like a citric acid, which helps to remove grease effectively, like citric acid. It's got a fresh lemony smell, and it really does help remove all the fingerprints and any residual polyester sludge, so they're really good for this, very soft. Baby wipes would probably be just as good, but just make sure that the baby wipes, if you're going to use those, don't have any kind of a softener, like any moisturiser in them, because you don't want to be sort of smearing grease all over the guitar. Yep, so excellent. That is the bulk of this work done, of this relicing job. There's still quite a bit to go, but basically, yeah, we're just going to start reconstructing this guitar now. And effectively, the hard elbow grease part has done. So obviously we need to re-hook up the grounding and live wires, so you've got to thread those through to the input-output jack and get those resoldered back on. It helps just to have somebody handy around. If you can do that, it just saves a little bit of time. You can do this completely by yourself, it's not a problem whatsoever, but it can just help to have somebody hold the soldering iron or the wire while you're doing this. It just saves a little bit of time and makes sure you get a really good connection. Soldering's quite a simple thing, it's nothing to be afraid of. As you can see now, I'm just tightening up the pick guard by hand, making sure that all the screws are in, but you don't want to crank them in too tight. You just want to do that so they feel like pinch tight, plus maybe a quarter turn. And as you can see now, I'm just getting a bit more help to reconnect the neck. And even though I said earlier don't use power tools, I am doing that here, but that's not as bad as it looks. I've basically put the torque setting to the very, very lowest it can be, and I've made sure that the screws gone in on the neck pocket really, really nice and firmly, and then I finished them off by hand, so effectively they were basically quite loose. And again, the same situation here by on the tremolo block, making sure that all of these screws go 95% of the way in, and just leave the last few percent just to be turned by hand, and that way you can get a nice solid finish and you can be a bit more progressive with the screws. You don't have to be worried about stripping them or completely grounding out the thread on top. It's really just a lot easier to do it by hand. It just takes a lot more time. It's not something you can just do with power tools all the way. It's just not precise enough, but it does save some time, so if you've got a bit of experience doing it, you can do it that way. You notice there's a solid wood block behind the trem because I like to hardtail my strats. That basically just helps the string resonance pass through to the body and gives you a lot more sustain. I use quite a lot of different tunings, so using a tremolo is not something I've ever been able to live with. And now finally just hooking up the earthing lead back onto the tremolo claw, and effectively that is everything back in place. So there we are for now. There you can see everything's sanded back. And effectively what I'm now going to do is go through a whole relicing process where I apply dinks and scratches and bumps to this, and you'll be able to see the final version very shortly.
Okay, drum roll please, it's time for the big reveal. Here we go. There we go, what a beauty. I'm really happy with the way this has come out. I think it can really help you with your process and with your journey if you create a bit of a backstory for yourself. So for me, this was going to be a kind of mild to moderate Relic. It wasn't going to be really, really heavy and trashed. So you can see that there's some added plectrum wear here, which is pretty traditional on Relic Strats, and obviously in the lower bow, and there's lots and lots of areas where it's taken dinks and knocks, all of them done carefully by me. I haven't trashed this guitar down the road or anything like that. I've done everything on here by hand, obviously taking time to observe images and taking a bit of care to think about where this guitar may have received some play over the years. Playing guitar is such a tactile thing that when you're holding it in your hands, it needs to feel as good as it does sound to your ears. With all the hardware, I give it a very light sanding with some wet and dry, just to give it that very, very slight aged look, almost like it's encouraging the patina to come out, but not enough to take it down to the base metal. And on the back, just like a real vintage Strat, I've given it quite a lot of buckle rash on this upper scalloped area. I haven't gone too aggressive with it because I want to wear that down over the years. I plan on keeping this guitar and I don't want to go too far with it, but I've just started that process nicely. So in terms of the neck, I've not done too much because it's so good. I've actually just given it a very, very light sanding on the back with 1000 grit wet and dry sandpaper. You can barely even see it, but it is a satin finish neck anyway, so because it felt so good, I didn't really want to go too far. I will admit that I have given some thought to fitting this vintage tint flame maple Strat neck, but actually what I found when I came to do that was that the bolt holes didn't line up. What you do tend to find on most Strat necks is that the drilled holes have got a very even spacing, so you can actually interchange necks from one guitar to the other, but in this case it's not quite close enough, so I'm afraid we're not going to be able to use this. Oh well, out it goes. And I think that might actually be a blessing in disguise, because this is a Canadian baked maple neck and it feels fantastic, it plays great, the frets are fantastic, and it fits into this neck pocket perfectly. It's really snug, and so the resonance passes from the strings all the way through into the body, and I can really feel it on this guitar, so I'm really happy with it. So we're going to keep these two together and we're going to play this as it is. So yeah, I think what we'll do now is we'll jump into the playing so you can hear what tones this thing's capable of. So let's have a listen. But first guys, let me just take a second to say, if you're enjoying this video, please do like it and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me to know that you're as into it as I am. I say it every video and I really mean it. I love the community that we have and I really appreciate the feedback via your comments. So please do like and subscribe, and let's keep the channel positive and growing as it is. So yeah, there she is, guys. What did you think? Please leave your comments and thoughts below. Be interested to hear them. If you got any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. I always try and get back to everyone. So I think that about wraps it up for today. I'll catch you again in the next one. Over and out.